So, dear participants, we have Professor Tulsi with us for this session. So, before I invite Professor Tulsi to take up the session, I would like to request Dr. Gill to kindly welcome the ma'am and introduce ma'am to the participants. First, over to Professor Gill.
Good morning, Ji. Good morning.
Dear participants, after our regular session by Dr. Patnaik, we have our very esteemed senior colleague, Dr. P.K. Tulsi, who will be delivering the second session. I'll be very brief in our introduction because she's actually she'll introduce herself once she takes that session. You'll understand what she's all about. So, Tulsi, she served NITTT at Chandigarh for 34 years, and during the course of those 34 years, she served as head of the educational management department for 11 years. She was dean R&D and for one term of 3 years. She's conducted more than 500 faculty development programs during her career, and that is mind-boggling. He's also developed two MOOCs programs, which you people would be assessing during the course of your careers at different times. Some may have attended those also. She's done 33 research studies in technical education, as well as certain sponsored research projects. Avid traveler, a researcher, a learner also. She's traveled to 60 conferences in India and abroad and delivered different papers there. He's been delivering expert lectures in different universities and technical institutions, besides whatever he's been doing at NATO. So I would like to welcome Dr. Tulsi. Dr. Tulsi, as of now, has superannuated from NATO, but she continues to support us whenever we help and guide us and our participants. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much for the kind words which you have used. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for giving the opportunity to interact with the legacy of experts from the technical education, I would say. I'll be dealing with two components in the NBA accreditation program, which you all are aware of the criteria. And these are nothing but the learning outcomes and teaching learning process. And before I switch over to the presentation, let me just give you that whenever we look at any technical education system, if it is shared or not shared. Just a minute. Let me share the entire screen with all of you and then, okay. So. Is it visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So as I said in the beginning, that I'll be focusing on two things. One, the learning outcomes. Another will be learning process. And maybe in the very first session, when you have listened to Dr. Patnaik and Dr. Bilwinder and Professor Gill, they might have already focused on that any education system, whether it is higher education system in general, or it is technical education system in particular, what the system aims at. It aims at producing or churning out the graduates who are competent enough to take up jobs or to start their entrepreneurial ventures, or they may pursue higher education if they so wish. So what is a competent person? We all agree on that account that a competent person is one who possesses knowledge in the subject of specialization or in the domain in which he has specialized, and he possesses the necessary technical skills which require him to perform certain tasks in the field or at job. In addition to that, what is important is he possesses the right kind of attitudes and behavior. So a combination of knowledge, skills, and attitude is what makes a person competent. And when we look at the accreditation, which is closely linked to outcome-based education, because since 2014, the outcome-based education started gaining importance in India because of the accreditation of programs, which was started by the National Board of Accreditation way back, but the outcome-based education came into being in 2013 and 14. And the whole outcome-based education is based on the premise, what are the outcomes of education? And the focus or the beginning point are the attributes which a graduate or a postgraduate should possess after completing their studies. So graduate attributes have been directly taken from the American Board of Engineering and Technology, and a bit modification has been done by the various institutions when they lay down their program outcomes. And once these graduate attributes are stated, then the process starts with selecting the experiences which need to be provided, because once you cluster the knowledge, skills, and attitude, you are able to select the courses which can provide the needed experience. And for implementation of that curriculum, what is needed is the appropriate teaching learning processes. And finally, there is assessment. So here you will see that in outcome-based education, outcome-based curriculum is aligned to graduate attributes. Teaching learning process is aligned again to the graduate attributes, and assessment is also aligned to the graduate attributes. And we have come across 3 different terms which have been used, and now the 4th has also been added, but primarily, and let me just skip that, we have come across the 3 terms: the program education objectives, the program outcomes, and the course outcomes. And you can see I have written lesson level learning outcomes too. Now, when we look at all these except this, which talks in terms of the objectives, because this is a much broader term which deals with the career and personal aspiration of an individual. And these are very broad statements. And maybe these are what a person would like to do when after 4 to 5 years of graduation. That means where he'll be placed. If he's placed in an industry, what kind of job, what kind of skills, what kind of knowledge he'll be demonstrating. And at the same time, we look at the program outcomes. That means we are primarily concerned with what a person will be able to do on completion of a particular program. And if you look at, these are more specific outcomes in comparison to the program education objectives, and then comes the course outcomes. And if we can define program outcomes as what a student can do after graduating from the particular program, then course outcomes are what a person can do on completion of a particular course. And anywhere you can see that program outcomes, then course outcomes, and then you can always go in for stating lesson level outcomes. And if the curriculum has been organized in units, then after course outcomes can be unit outcomes, and then comes the lesson outcomes. Because a unit may comprise of number of topics, and each topic when taught may consist of number of lessons. So each lesson level outcome can be written. And any program per se is nothing but a combination of courses, and courses, then the courses consisting of the topics. So with this background, let's now just quickly say that whenever we say these are some of the examples which I picked up, that when we talk in terms of program education objectives, you can see that a person where he is working, that is, he's working as a professional engineer, then what is he is expected? He is expected to demonstrate technical competence and leadership. If he is a member of a society, he is also demonstrating commitment towards sustainable development. And he will also be a lifelong learner and showing or demonstrating those qualities of lifelong learning. And then he can provide innovative solutions using complex problem solving skills or research. So this is one where we are talking in terms of program education objectives. And then program outcomes. Everybody has picked up these from the graduate attributes. They have been translated into the 12 program outcomes. Maybe you are all familiar with this. I'm not going to repeat all this, but just to give you an idea, these are where we have 12. Then you have the course outcomes. That means if we have a computer science program, maybe digital, electronic, or data structures and algorithms, or computer organization and architecture, these may be the different courses which form a part of the program. Now, in a nutshell, we are now clear that learning outcomes are nothing but statements. Statements regarding what a student is able to do at the end of a unit of instruction. Now, this unit of instruction, you can call it a topic, you can call it a lesson, you can also state it as a course, or this unit of instruction may be completion of the program. So when you talk in terms of program completion, it is the program outcomes. If you're talking in terms of the completion of the course, they come to course outcomes, and otherwise you can take it as the topic or the lesson level outcomes. And here you can find, if I only take, because what is important from the teacher's point of view is that a teacher who is trying to teach a particular course, he has to translate the course outcomes again into lesson level outcomes. And these are some of the examples which are from different fields of engineering. And here you can see what is common in among all these examples. Now here you see, first is define efficiency. That means a student is able to define efficiency, define programming, compare diesel engine and petrol engine with petrol engine, differentiate between. Now, what are these? When we look at all these, commonality is all these examples start with an action verb. Here you find define, compare, differentiate, identify, write, or design. All these, in English, we talk in terms of the action verbs or activity verbs. And here, all learning outcomes, they start with an action verb. And when we say they start with action verb, it is very specific behavior which is expected of the learner. And define has only one meaning. Each individual is likely to interpret that you want a standard definition of an efficiency, or you want a standard definition of programming, or when you say compare, you are primarily interested in strengths, the similarities and the differences. And when you say differentiate, you are only concerned with the points of differences. And identification means you are asking the person to locate or recognize. can write a program where the person is creating something, and design also means a person is to design, give a plan, layout of staircase. Now, in other way, we can say that learning outcomes, when stated, they are specific. And this behavior is expected of the learner. And this behavior, whether it is define, compare, write, or design, this behavior is observable. Now, when we say observable, anything which is observable is measurable. And here, when we say definition, you can always compare the definition with the standard definition and then give marks to the person, how many marks that person would be able to get, 2 out of 2 or 1 out of 2 and so on. Another is, these are all learning outcomes which are achievable. You can achieve these, and say for example, if I write solve problems. Now, a person can never solve problems of all nature, all types, or all kinds. But if I say solve problems of first order differential equation related to, the person can solve, I can with confidence put that he can solve different first order differential equations. So these are stated in such a manner that they become achievable. And thereby they are realistic and time framed. That means within a given period of time, you can achieve these learning outcomes. So in nutshell, the learning outcomes fulfill the criteria of being SMART. And SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time frame. Let me just quickly go back to, if you look at these, the program outcomes which have been specified. Here you will find the term which has been used is apply. Here you find the term used is identify, formulate, or analyze the complex engineering problems. These are all nothing but action verbs which have been used. Even when you look at the design solutions, design system components, it is nothing but starting with an action verb. And here you can see conduct investigations. So it is again where you are applying the knowledge and you are carrying out certain tasks, the real life experiments or investigations or studies to find solutions to the problems. Then tool usage. So here you can see create, select, apply. These are nothing again but action verbs. And here apply. Then you can see here understand the impact and demonstrate knowledge of and need for sustainable development. Again, it will be analyzing the situations and then applying the needed knowledge. Apply, then function. So he's demonstrating the qualities of being a good member or a good leader. And communicate, again skill which is demonstrated by the individual. And here again you will see demonstrate and apply. These are the two action verbs. Recognize is the lifelong learning, recognize the need for. So all program outcomes also start, but what will be the difference when we go to program outcomes or course outcomes, or we move to lesson level outcomes? All these outcomes have used the terminology which was given by Bloom way back in 1956. But this taxonomy has been revised by one of the students of Bloom's, that is Anderson, and Anderson and Prathwal has given a revised taxonomy for cognitive domain. So learning outcomes, as we have seen, we have knowledge, skills, and attitudes. At that particular point of time, in 56, Bloom has tried to categorize intended learning outcomes, which were referred to as the instructional objectives at that time into three. This was cognitive domain. Anything which is concerned with the knowledge component, acquisition of information or knowledge, is a part of cognitive domain. And anything which is to do with ability to do something with rapidity, accuracy, and smoothness, that is concerned with the psychomotor domain. So here we talk in terms of the psychomotor skills, and then the affective component consists of attitudes, behavior, which a person is expected to demonstrate. So like you are talking in terms of attendance, punctuality, regularity, teamwork, leadership, creativity. They are all part of your affective domain. So any learning outcomes that is concerned with acquisition of information and knowledge is a part of cognitive domain. Anything which is concerned with skill is a part of psychomotor, and then attitudes, behavior, they become a part of affective domain. And here you can see the comparison between the two taxonomies. The original taxonomy you find here, and it had 6 levels which were defined. It consisted of knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And Anderson and Crackpole has revised this taxonomy and given the new terminology: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So what is the difference? Here the nouns were used. Here the process, the verb has been used: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing. Now here when we talk in terms of another difference, you will see that in the original taxonomy, synthesis was at number 5, but in the revised taxonomy, creating has been added as the highest level of learning that can take place, where the person is able to synthesize the knowledge he has acquired at the various 5 levels, and then he can create something new out of it. And here, evaluation was at the highest level. And here when we say remembering, what is remembering? Remembering level learning outcomes are those outcomes where a person can recall, recognize, or reproduce the learned things. And what is it that in a subject a student learns which he can recall? These are primarily the factual information and the labels which are part of the course content. For example, when we talk in terms of definition, when we talk in terms of the statement of rules, when we talk in terms of the name of machine, name of tools, these are nothing where only the recall of what has been learned is required and reproduction of the knowledge. So rote memorization is the process which is used by the individual at this level. And here you can see some of the examples at the remembering level when we talk in terms of the learning outcomes, and a person who is teaching a subject in electronics and talking about the open and closed system. So person can define open and closed system. A person who is teaching quality control is define quality control, or a civil person defines reinforcement. And a basic principles: state owns law. State the advantages and disadvantages. Now here you can see when we have seen define is a verb which can be used. State is a verb which can be used to write a learning outcome at the remembering level. If you say name also, if you're asking a name of a machine, name of a tool, or a name of a scientist who has given a particular principle or given a theory, it is nothing but rote memorization which comes into play. Then enlist any 5. So list or enlist, these are the verbs which can be used to write outcomes at the remembering level. There are a few more, if you can see, define force or state the second law, state advantages, label the parts of late machine. So label is another which you can use, or write the formula, or give the full form of LAN and WAN. All these learning outcomes which use the verbs like we have seen: define, state, label, list, write, give, and list. These are nothing but the verbs used for writing the learning outcomes at the remembering level. And this is considered to be the lowest level of learning that takes place. So wherever a person can memorize and reproduce, that is nothing but learning outcome at the remembering level. The next higher level of learning is understanding. Now, when I say understanding, if I say define force, another is I say explain the concept of force. Now, here you will see there is a difference, because when we use the verb explain, what is expected of the learner? A learner is expected to explain, means explain the meaning of force in his own words, give one or two examples to demonstrate the concept of force, and then we say the person has understood. If he simply repeats the definition, that is not what understanding is. So understanding learning outcomes are higher level than the remembering level. And here the person, for example, if you show a graph between stress and strain, and on the basis of the graphic representation, the person comes to the conclusion stress is directly proportional to strain. It is nothing but an ability to interpret the data, interpret the graphic representation. Or when we ask a person to differentiate between open and closed system, this is nothing where the person has understood the concept of open and closed system, and he's able to now write down the points of differences between the two. Or if you have the data given to the person and you ask him to summarize, say what is the average, so person is able to give you the mean of that. It's nothing but the person is summarizing. Or a person has observed an event and you ask him to summarize the main points of the expert lecture given by one of the experts from the industry. It is nothing where the person is only highlighting. If he has understood, he'll be able to do that. So inferring. So here you can see what are some of the verbs which can be used to write learning outcomes at the understanding level. So when you say derive the relationship, maybe derive the relationship current and voltage, or static temperature and stagnation, or stress and strain, these are nothing where the person has understood the basic concept and then he's trying to derive the relationship. Or explain the difference between, or simply differentiate between normal and oblique shocks, or explain the ramp effect, or differentiate between shaft and jet propulsion. Now here you can see when we are using the verb explain, derive, differentiate, interpret, or estimate, these are, or I can say, find the value or find the area of the given room, given the length and the breadth of the room. The person is able to do that. Or we can say the person can find the values if he knows the formula. Then these are nothing but verbs which can be used to write learning outcomes at the understanding level. Some more example, you can say compare, you can use the word write the steps for recovering a file from recycle bin. Just enlisting the steps is the memorization, remembering. But if the person is writing the steps for recovering and is explaining those, then it is beyond, higher than remembering level. Or describe the steps in academic plan. Or explain Herzberg's theory of motivation. This is nothing where the ability to explain in his own words, give examples, or differentiate or summarize. Then the third level of learning outcomes is apply the learned knowledge. And what is it that we apply in real life or the world of work are the principles primarily which we learn. And each one of the courses which we teach to the undergraduates or postgraduates, there are a large number of principles in each course. So apply those principles in what is important is new situation. Now, when I say new situation, that means the situations which have been dealt in the class. If you are giving the same situation and the person is able to apply, this is nothing but understanding. Now, for example, if the person has learned to subtract something, a small child, and he has learned to subtract, say, 2 digits, and he is saying that you have a 50 minus 16, and the person comes out with 34. Now, you give a person, he is now knowing the principles of subtraction. Now you give a ₹100, the student goes to the market, buys certain things, and then he gives the balance, calculating how much he spent and then what is the balance. This is where he's applying a learned rule of subtraction in a new situation. Or when you are able to apply the principle of siphon to have the water on the ground from the top hill or maybe from the ceiling, then it is nothing but where you are applying a learned principle. Or when you are using, like you are having the positive, negative, and when you are dealing with electrical wires, you are keeping that principle in mind and applying that principle when you connect the wires. So applying is where the person is able to apply the learned knowledge in a new situation. And here you can see some of the examples where what is it, the verbs which we can use is calculate or find out or determine or demonstrate or convert or write or solve. Say for example, a person has to shoot a target under the water. So he can demonstrate the principle of refraction. If your person is using a mirror, he can demonstrate the principle of reflection. Giving simple examples, or the person, as you can see, you can use different verbs where you are, a student is required to apply the learned knowledge and find solution to something. Then comes the next higher level, that is analyzing. Analyzing, as the term goes, is breaking down the whole into its constituent parts. And what is to be analyzed? You can analyze the reason, you can analyze the causes, you can analyze the strengths and weaknesses, you can analyze the factors affecting certain phenomena. And this is the ability which is higher than all the three, that is remembering, understanding, and applying. And here, number of things can be covered. Like you are teaching, what are these application and higher than application? These are referred to as higher level cognitive abilities. And the focus of our education system has to shift from remembering and understanding to applying and analyzing, evaluating, and creating. That means the focus has to be on developing these higher level cognitive abilities. And here, when we are looking at analyzing, some of the examples which come to, I've just written few of these. You can see here 3. Identify causes of failure of a machine. Locate a fault in the given circuit diagram. Or locate a fault in the program written in C++. Or locate mistakes in the given algorithm. Or analyze the reasons for increase in gold prices during the last 6 months. or analyze the impact of the new policy, National Education Policy 2020 on the higher education system. So one can think of, when we are using analyzing, identify, locate, analyze, explain the reason, explain the causes, can be used, or appraise something. So this is where you can write. And the next higher level of learning outcomes is evaluating. Evaluating simply means making the judgments. Now, for example, if you want to buy a mobile phone for yourself, you are going to the market, you're trying to have a look at the different brands which is available, then you zero down to one particular brand, and then you ask for different model. So what do? You compare the features of the various model. You also look at the aesthetics of that model. This is nothing but a criterion which is used to compare the various models which are available. And then you are trying to determine the worth of that phenomena or that product. And then you look at the cost and you try to compare it with the resources available with you, and you take a decision. So evaluating includes all those outcomes where a person is required to determine the worth, take a decision in a given situation. And here you can see some of the examples for the, when we say judge the appropriateness of circular iron stairs for a given residential building. When a person is making a judgment, is determining the worth of that iron stairs in the given residential building. Evaluate the effectiveness of communication in a given organization. Or we say, critically evaluate the performance appraisal system in place in the technical education system, technical education. So we are using appraise, judge, evaluate, or say, for example, there is a, if I say select engine for a given sports utility vehicle. So if the sports utility vehicle is there and specifications are given and person has to make a decision, what kind of engine should go in this kind of vehicle? This is nothing you are able to select. So wherever there are two materials, two techniques, two, I would say, theories which are applicable, and the person has to make a judgment, decide which will be applicable, then a person is involved in the process of evaluating. And the highest level of learning outcomes in the cognitive domain are at the creating level. Creating, that means you are able to synthesize whatever knowledge you have acquired and create something new or find solutions to the problems which exist in the society or in the industry or in the real life. And here you can see that we can use design, write, determine, or formulate, because even if you are able to formulate a plan or a policy or a, that is nothing but you are able to create something, right? If you are able to design a residential building, this is nothing but you are able to create something. Or if you are synthesizing the knowledge in the language of C++ and you can write a customized program, then it is nothing but you have the ability to write. So you can see that learning outcomes can be written at 6 levels, and it will depend upon whether you want to write at lesson or course or you want to write at the program level. Now, just when you look at all those program outcomes, They are all application and higher than application. But when you go to the lesson level, a teacher is required to translate it to the remembering, understanding, then comes application. When it comes to the formative evaluation, it may be that you are doing at all the various levels. But when you are going an end term examination, it is more of the course outcomes which needs to be taken into account, and then maybe application and higher than application level is taken care of. Now here, let's see if likewise, one can write learning outcomes in the psychomotor domain, that is skill area. And here when you're talking of design a component, that is all theory which is concerned with, but here you are concerned with that the person is able to do something with rapidity, smoothness, and accuracy. And the process of acquiring skill starts with the process of imitation, that some expert demonstrates the skill and the novice tries to imitate the process. And then a stage comes where the novice is asked to handle the machinery equipment on his own. And when the person manipulates that, he commits number of errors, mistakes. And then with practice, what happens? Accuracy creeps in. So precision is the next step. The person is able to perform different acts with precision. So for example, if I take the case of car driving, a person now learns to insert the key and start the car. Or the person knows how to change the gears. The person knows how to depress or accelerate the car. The person knows how to take the left or the right turn. But when he's trying to drive the car, he's not able to coordinate the various movements. He's able to perform the acts independently, but not as a whole. So coordination among the various acts would come after long practice that is required. So articulation, where the person is able to perform the complete act. That means drive the car, he can start, he can maintain the car in motion, he can stop the car, he can take the regular maintenance of car, and then an ability where he can modify, adapt the driving. Say for example, he has learned to drive in empty spaces, now he's able to drive in a crowded place. He has learned to drive in the plain area, he's able to drive in the hilly area, and so on. So naturalization. And the naturalization is where the person has become expert in that skill. He is able to proficiently do that task. Only then he is able to innovate, modify, and adapt. And here, just one example of if you have to create a computer, connect the computers in local area network, these are the steps. So if you are able to write the steps, they are nothing but the learning outcomes, because these steps are orderly and no step can be missed by the individual. So here, if you start all the steps by using a action verb, they become your learning outcomes in the psychomotor domain. And then comes your affective domain, which is the most neglected, I would say, domain as far as the education system is concerned. Though we have been focusing on these, that right kind of attitude and behavior needs to be developed. And our students don't get accepted even at the national level or the international level, the studies which have been carried out. They say, in addition to lack of technical knowledge and skills, what is missing among our students is the soft skill, which is again a part of affective domain. The students are more oriented to white collar jobs rather than doing a blue collar job. They don't want to toil their hands in the soil. So what is it that is needed is developing the right kind of attitudes. And here you can see I've written very simple example. Who is not there that the student should obey the rules of classroom, of the labs, of the institution for the assessment and so on. We expect our student to observe safety precautions, attend classes, cooperate with others when a task is given in groups, communicate, maybe communicate in large groups, small groups, one-to-one, communicate through telephone, exhibit honesty, respect others, maintain cordial relation, or work as a effective team member. We expect our students to do, because teamwork, creativity, leadership, these have become adaptability. These are the skills which have become very, very important. So what is needed is that the person needs to have all these attitudes and behavior to be effective and efficient and contribute significantly to the society. So in a nutshell, I would say learning outcomes, as we say, if we know Bloom's taxonomy, we know the verbs which are to be used at different levels, it becomes much easier for us to write course outcomes, to write program outcomes, or lesson level outcomes. With this background, let's move on to, if these learning outcomes have to be achieved, then the implementation of the curriculum takes place through teaching learning processes. And when I say the teaching learning processes, there has been a shift in the paradigm. The learning connotation has changed. It is no longer that we are going by the behaviorist approach, but now it is constructivist approach which is followed. And according to this approach, a person is able to construct meaning for himself or herself. So whatever new information is provided, that is either related by the individual to what he already knows or what others know about it. So it is also a part of social learning, that he learns from the experiences of others. Unless and until the person is actively involved in thinking, doing something, he will not be able to construct meaning for himself. So what is the thrust in the constructivist approach of learning is that rather than using teacher-centered instructional strategies, the focus must shift in the teaching learning processes to active learning strategies, where the person, the learner, who is the center of attention, who is the person who has to acquire new knowledge, he has to demonstrate that knowledge, is actively involved in the process. So focus has shifted. So the role of the teacher thereby is not that of information provider, because the information is now available on a click of mouse, and you have access to tons of information. But the role of the teacher is recognized years back as a facilitator of learning. Why we say the facilitator of learning? Because the person, the teacher, has to create conditions whereby the student can acquire the needed learning and demonstrate the learning outcomes or attainment or achievement of those learning outcomes. For example, if factual information is there, say you are asking a person to have definitions, statement of rules, the symbols of many, say, chlorine, hydrogen, oxygen, etc., or symbol constant values and so on. This is where a repeated practice, the more practice you give to memorize those things or use those things, the person will be able to remember that. So the conditions are different. If the person has to apply the knowledge, Then you need to create new situations where that knowledge is applicable, and the person will be able to have the learning outcomes at the applying level. And if you want that a person should be able to create something, then the conditions required is that you give examples of variety of examples where the knowledge is applicable, where the knowledge is not applicable. You also deal with some real life situations or the industry problems where the knowledge is applicable. And then the person will be able to create something new. So complex problems need to be given, real life problems need to be given to the individual. And here, when we look at the teaching learning process, there are large number of strategies which we are familiar with. And you can see on your screens that these can be broadly classified into large group, small group, and individualized. And what is happening in our classrooms is that most of the time we have been banking upon lecture method because this is the most convenient way of teaching. But this method develops or enables the learner to acquire learning outcomes at only remembering, understanding, or it will depend upon whether the person is delivering a lecture makes it one way or two way. If the person converts into two way, then maybe some of the ability to analyze and evaluate can be developed in addition to application. But primarily, it is one-way lecture which is just predominantly used by each one of us. And these small group methods which can help us to achieve various. But the focus now should shift to the active learning strategies. And let me just deal with active learning strategies, which will consist of 1 minute paper. Now, what is 1 minute paper? 1 minute paper is that if you have taught something for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, now you give 1 minute to the individual to write the significant learning and what they have learned in 1 minute. Think pair share. Think pair share is that you raise a question, you allow the students in the class to work in pairs, and first they independently think of the answer, then they share the answer with each other. Think pair share. Simple technique which can be utilized. Muddiest point is another. Muddiest point is that they identify a point which they could not understand in the class. And even this techniques helps you to identify those things. Anything from me? So muddiest point is the point which is not understandable. There is confusion or chaos. And you would like to identify that point and clarify that to your students. Discussion. So it is maybe two people discussing or a small group discussing with each other. So discussion can be there. Then brainstorming can be used as an active learning strategy. Then a large number of strategies, just giving you a few which can be easily integrated into teaching learning. Brainstorming. This is generation of ideas with deferred judgment. So evaluation is not carried out. Say, for example, you want that students to generate ideas, what new features can be added to the mobile or what feature can be removed from the, this mobile. So the people can generate ideas with respect to the additions which can be there. So you don't evaluate. Any weird idea is given by the individual is accepted. So evaluation is carried out once the round robin technique is used, and you continue with this process till there are no more ideas with the class. Then you will have large number of ideas from the student. And then a small committee can examine the feasibility, the worthwhileness of the idea generated, and prioritize on the ideas which can be implemented. Then question answer technique can be used in pairs where the one person raises a question to other person replies, other raise a question, and then so reversal questioning is possible within the pairs. Then short cases and scenario. As we are familiar with the case studies, so small incidents can become cases for discussion in the class. Or it will depend, one page, one paragraph cases there, which you can provide to your students. So here, the person is able to analyze the case, apply the learned principles, and find a solution to. There are two types of cases which you can use in your classes, which may be inductive cases where generalized rule is applicable, or you have the cases where you can deduce or come out with a generalized principle. Then jigsaw. Jigsaw is where a topic is divided into 4 parts. Say you have taken a topic where you are dealing with the machine, and you want the concept to be made clear, the types to be made clear, the parts and the functions or the working of the machine, and then advantages and disadvantages. So you divide the topic into 4, and there are 4 students in a group. One student will learn about the concept and types. Other would learn about the parts and the functions. Other would learn about the working of that. Another would learn about the advantages and disadvantages of the machine. And they come prepared to the class. Whatever they have learned, they share with the group. So 4 members are able to learn the whole topic from each other. So peer learning, you can encourage through the use of jigsaw. And then fishball. Fishball is a technique which is again used where the whole class is divided into 2 groups. There's an internal circle, and there's external circle. So the people in the internal circle discuss an issue. External circle only observes. Then external circle discuss that issue, and the internal circle observes that. So the point is that rather than using the large group method, focus has to shift on active learning, and where we can also think of group discussion, case studies, seminars, project work, role play, games, which we can include in our teaching learning process to make it more active for the learner. In addition to that, individualized learning methods are available. And I'll take up these, just move on to, because this is where we are theory. But the pandemic forced us to go on for online teaching. And if the situation continues, maybe this year, again, we are trying to use the online teaching. And a stage has been visualized where blended learning would be more useful, where you combine the face-to-face teaching with the online learning. And here you can see this technology. You must have seen this clause number of times. Anyone can learn anytime, anyone, anywhere. So this has a lot of flexibility. And Commonwealth of Learning, they have come out with 3 different models that can be used in the teaching learning process. And this is where the model number 1, where you have face-to-face teaching, which is supported by the online activity. That means it is primarily the face-to-face teaching, but you ask the person to view a YouTube video, see the PowerPoints which are available on the slideshow, or maybe you have identified the internet sites which you ask your student to go through before he comes to the class. And then there are tasks which are given in the face-to-face, or a case study given in a face-to-face situation where the person is able to do that. Another model which is there is the blended block model or the program flow model. So it has different components. That is, first is your face-to-face session. That is, you ask the students, you explain what is expected of them, what is the course content, what are the various tasks which need to be accomplished, and maybe there is 1 or 2 days orientation. Then there are online tutorials which are available. The material is available online. And finally, they are required to again come back and make presentation on the term paper or the project which they have to accomplish. And this is where it has been labeled as program flow model. So you have different components of face-to-face and online. And then this is fully online model where online courses there, and there are activities which are synchronous activities where you expect your students to be available at the same time and you are carrying out. Say, for example, there's an expert who has been invited, you want all the students to attend. This is synchronous activities. There's live interaction between the expert and the students. Or you want a group discussion to be organized among the small groups, among the large group. So you can divide students into small group, give separate rooms to them for discussion, but you are want all the students to be there at the same time. Or you are going to discuss the assignment and provide the feedback to your learners on how they have attempted and what was expected of them. You want all the students synchronous activities. Then asynchronous or asynchronous activities would include that you have uploaded the material they can read at any time. You have YouTube videos which are available, they can see at any time. There are practice tasks which you have inbuilt into the course. They can take up the task and see how they have learned it. So these are the 3 models which are, and what is important is because at a flipped classroom, the concept is the first model which is there. But I would say in addition to that, now the new national education policy, which is 2020, which has been announced, has laid emphasis on choice-based credit system. And everyone is likely to be use that and introduce that system. And I would say on the platforms which has been created by the government, there's a SWAM platform by the Ministry of Education now, earlier the MHRD, and you have all these 9 coordinators. And you have undergraduate courses which are available on NAPTO, AICTE website, CEC. Then you have the IM Bombay. They have Bombay, Bangalore. And these, why I am referring to these, that now we should look into making utilization of the resources which are already available. Large number of courses are available. So can we try to map those courses with the curriculum and then give choices to the students where we can also fulfill the criteria of choice-based credit system. Another is where we are talking in terms of multidisciplinary. Can we make open the courses from other disciplines which are available on the UGC? Now the consortium for, what is that? CEC is your consortium for education communication. So if you are having courses of other disciplines, maybe humanities, maybe history, maybe geography, or maybe the arts, or maybe the music and so on, can those courses be made available to the students online so that they can pursue at the time which is convenient and you can maximize the potential of the individual? This is what is a change which is required. And with respect to practical work, I would like to point out that as the scenario exists, hardly 30 to 40%, I would say, the practical work is carried out. There are a number of reasons which are there, you know better than me. So I'll not go to the reason, but I would say what other, if we really want to develop the skills, then the focus must be shifted to project-based learning. And when I say project-based, what the project, you all know that the project passes through the selection of the identification and selection of the project, then planning for the project, then you have the organization of the project, then you go for execution of the project, then you go for the report writing, and maybe finally a seminar or the viva voce. So the project selection is very, very important. And you can always think in terms of minor projects as well as major projects. Minor project maybe of 4 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or 1 day project maybe there. Say for example, you are teaching the timber in civil. Why can't you ask your students to go to the timber market, collect small samples of timber from the market, because they will be easily available, compare the features of the various timber, and then learn from the person who is owning that timber market, and come back and collate that information and summarize that information. It's a project which will not take more than 1 day. So project-based learning asks the students to go to the community, identify the problems faced by the community. 1 day, 2 day interaction with the community. They can identify the problems and then take up, prioritize those problems, take up one of the problems as a project, right? So projects need to be real life, as we have started with hackathon, and there are organizations which are enlisting their problems. So even that data bank can be used for taking up these small projects which are real life, and students are made to think and find solution to those problems. Then problem-based learning is another. The major difference between project-based learning and problem-based learning is projects require application of the learned knowledge. But problem-based learning, you give them the problem, you provide them the resources which are needed to solve the problem, and the students learn that knowledge, acquire the additional knowledge required to solve that problem on their own. Because books are available, reference books, code book, data codes, they are all available, and the students acquire the knowledge which is the problem, and then try to find a solution to the problem. So project-based learning, problem-based learning, so application and higher than application level abilities along with the technical skills, plus the attitude and behavior, ability to work in teams, show the leadership, problem solving, decision making. These are the abilities which will be developed among your students. Then another concept which has emerged of late is the virtual laboratories. So IITs again are working on this. Ministry of Education has given this project to them. So here you can see that virtual labs have been developed by IIT Bombay, and they are extending help to other institutions to develop the virtual labs. So this is what is required, because if we don't have good infrastructure or the equipment, machinery, tools, adequate machinery tools for our students, then why not to create virtual labs where they can, sitting at home, they can do the experimentation and acquire the skills. This is what is needed in today's scenario. Then on the job training, I would say not here, but I can talk in terms of virtual internships. So now many industries, they are offering virtual internship to the students, whereby you can develop the necessary skills among your students. So cloud-based resources are available and student can utilize. Problems are given, then you can use the cloud resources and carry out, find the solution to the problems assigned to them by the companies. Then simulations can be used. Again, I would say IIT Bombay has taken a project on simulations and animations. Then spoken tutorial is, again, you are all familiar with. So wherever IT skills are there, so spoken tutorials are already available with us. So these need to be integrated into the teaching learning processes to make the maximum use of what is available and improve the student involvement in the teaching learning processes and provide them active learning experience and maximize learning at their end. This is what is needed. So I would stop here and come back to the group. So if there are any questions, or anything you would like to add, here. Oh, 1 minute. How many? Just let me go back to, yes. If I think there are a few questions written here, let me take up. There are a few questions.
G. Chat is not related to questions.
Not related to questions. Okay. So over to the audience. If you would like to ask any question at this stage, or you would like to supplement. Hanji, are they? We have 119 members.
So, ma'am, should we open the session for question and answer? No?
Hanji, Larry and Anna. So there is one question. Mr. Kamalveer Singh Jinsa has written, what is used in remembering? What verb is used? When it comes to remembering, you can use the verb define. They say define force, define semiconductors, define diode, or you can use the word name. Name of the machine, you want, name the machine, name the parts, name the tools that is there. Or you can use a word state. State the advantages of 5G over 4G. Or you can say enlist 3 chemical properties of a given material, or enlist physical properties of the material. Or you can say identify. So you are giving tools and you say identify the spanner, or identify the screwdriver, or identify the vernier caliper from the given tools. So identify can be used. These are some of the verbs which can be used at the remembering level. Some Dr. Sarika has written, what verb is used for classification? Classification is classify. Simple, classify. This is at the understanding level. Then Dr. Narayan Jain, उन्होंने लिखा how we can correlate the Bloom level with the POs. So if you permit me, I'll open up my presentation, go to the PO and then correlate with it. So it is already here. My presentation is there here. So if I go back to the POs, you can see here the very first PO. Here applying the knowledge here. So you can see the very first PO is apply the knowledge of mathematics, science and engineering fundamental. So it is at the application level. So apply the knowledge, it is written. Then problem analysis, where you are saying identify. Again, identification is when you are able to apply the principles of selecting and defining a research problem or engineering problem. Then formulate, again, is application of the learned knowledge. Carrying out review of literature is again application. But here you find analyze. Analyze complex engineering problems is at the analysis level, where you will identify the factors which impinge upon the problems, and then you prioritize which particular factor you would like to include in the problem and find solution to, or you would like to have the multiplicity of factors and then come out with optimal solution to the problem. So here you are seeing that it starts with application, go to analysis. And then the lower levels, one thing which we need to remember is, when we talk in terms of application, that means remembering and understanding is inclusive. If we are going to analysis, that means remembering, understanding, and applying is inclusive. So there is a hierarchy. So if you go to the higher level, the lower levels are subsumed in it. And if you go to design, design is nothing but creating. Or development of solution, if it involves technical skills where you need to ability to do something, then skill component will be included. But if you restrict it to only designing, formulating a plan or writing the plan, it will be at the creating level. So here's design solutions for complex engineering problems and design system component. It is only restricted to design of things, so creating. Then conduct investigations of complex problems. So here you can see where you are involved in design of experiments. So here comes your first, you are using up to that you are designing a process, identifying the problem. Now you are finding solution, and in the process you are having psychomotor skills. So here the psychomotor skill of an individual is involved if you carry out research and come out with a solution. Then modern tool usage. So create, you can see it is written, select is at the evaluating level, apply is at the application level. So highest level is create. Create kya karna hai? So you can create appropriate technique, you can create resources, you can create IT tools. So create kar sakte hain. Or if there are number of techniques which are available, and in a given situation you would like to use one technique, then the process of evaluation comes into play, and you are able to compare the pros and cons of the techniques and select the appropriate one. And if you simply want to apply in a given situation, it is application. Then engineering and society. Now here comes your a combination of your attitudes and behavior, right? So even engineer and society apply reasoning informed by the contextual knowledge to assess societal, health, safety, legal, cultural issues relevant to the professional engineering practice. So it is applying reasoning. So what kind of reasoning? Maybe engineer and the society, you want the sensitization of the professional engineer to the problems that exist in the society. You are concerned with sustainable development. So I would see it more of the attitudes, behavior plus the psychomotor skills. Then this is covered there. Then you have ethics. So ethics, again, it is thou written apply ethical principles. So it is the domain of your attitude and behavior. Then individual and teamwork, again, is attitudes and behavior. Then communication is a part of attitudes and behavior. Project management and finance. So here again, whatever knowledge you have acquired, you are now managing the project in the multidisciplinary environment. So application of a learned knowledge, which is there, but it is covered in many ways. Project management has been taken as a part of the skills which are additionally required as a employability skills. These are covered under that. Then lifelong learning is again a part of your attitudes, behavior. So learning to learn skills. Anything you would like to say, sir? Do you agree? Yes, over to the audience, please. Do you agree, sir? There is another question. My question is, verb, what is used in which? No, what is not used? What is used in framing questions? When we write learning outcomes are always written in the statement form, starting with the verb. What is not a verb? What is used when we write a question? What is used when you design a question paper? There also we will say what is not to be used. You start with a verb and then frame the question. Then you have what, which, where, when, who, how are not seen in. Yes, they are not. They are used in questions. All learning outcomes start with an action verb. Action verb is define, compare, evaluate, create, appraise, judge, select, etc., etc. Not what, where, these are used. So learning outcomes are not written in question form. Then, okay, thank you so much. Then we have any other question if you have in mind. So I think there is a lot of confusion among many of us that learning outcomes are not questions. First thing, learning outcomes are stated in the beginning, that what a student is expected to do on completion of a course, on completion of a topic, on completion of a program. These are the attributes which are enlisted prior to that. That is why outcome-based education says that whenever you are going to float a program, you try to gather information from the industry, from the work organization, from your alumni who are working in the field, and try to jot down the knowledge, skills, and attitudes they would require to perform a particular job. Say, for example, I am working as a junior engineer. What are my job responsibilities? To shoulder that job responsibility, I need to find out what knowledge, skills, and attitude would be required. And on the basis of that knowledge, skills, and attitude, I write the program outcomes. And on the basis of then I do cluster the knowledge component, identify the courses which should go into that program. So combine those pieces of knowledge which are or which can be clubbed together, and then a course is said, say database management, or you say cloud computing, or you are talking in terms of introduction to computer. So what the basic knowledge about that? So it is the process which starts from identifying the attributes, then coming with the curricular experiences, and then providing the teaching learning process. This is how we move in the outcome. It is not simple input, process, output. Earlier we used to identify. NITR has been doing the competence profiles were prepared, but not that rigorously we were implementing those things. So here I would say even now, the universities do not follow this process. The technical institutions which are autonomous, they may be following the programs which have been, but universities still not follow. So there is a clause in the criteria. Have you given the feedback to the industry that this is what is expected of the graduate, and this is what needs to be included in? These are the things which are, I think, should be there. There is one more. Sometimes we see same verbs into, yes. There can be the same verbs. Say, for example, explain. Now, when I say explain the causes, ab dekhiye, do cheezein hain. When I say explain the causes of transmission losses, right? Now there is a book which is available. There are a number of causes which could be the probable causes. If I ask the same question to my student and he is going to give the answer, this is at the understanding level. But when I say explain the causes of transmission losses in a given locality, and I give a plan of the locality and how the people are making misuse of that, maybe that becomes a question at the kahan pe jayega? Analysis level.
Analysis.
That analysis level. So you have to see when you write a learning outcome, if it is saying that a person in a given situation, he has to identify, then it becomes identify or locate, or he has to explain, then it is at the analysis level. Otherwise, identification, identify, maybe at the remembering level, or explain at the understanding level. So if you think the behavior the person has to demonstrate on the basis of learning only of the book, it is understanding. He has understood, he is able to explain. But if he has to carry out analysis, break down the whole, the context into its constituent part, it becomes analysis. So there are verbs which can be used at different levels. The same verb can be used at different levels. Yes. There is a second question, derive an equation is at the understanding level, because the person has now to derivation. If he has understood the concepts and the process, he can derive a equation. He can derive a equation. Derive will come under yes, the answer is already there given by our one Mr. Sarma. So I'm not able to speak the very first. Ji.
May I?
Ji. Sure, sir. Sure.
Ma'am, students may have his own method for deriving the equation. We may adopt some new method then.
No, here the question is, if you are asking it is derive an equation. If the person has evolved a new method, your purpose is to see the derivation, or you are going by the method? Just tell me. If it is the method, the question would be different. The question would be, how can you derive an equation which you are thinking of, right? Here the students will give you different answer. One person may repeat the book, so there is no creativity. The person who has given the new method, your purpose was to judge the creativity on the part of the individual. So what is it that you would like to assess? Whether you want to assess the understanding, or whether you want the person to create a new method. What is your purpose? That will depend upon you, how you frame the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Sure, please.
Yeah, ma'am. Very informative session, madam. Thank you so much. But I have to little not, madam. And I have a question like what we are following currently using Blackboard and PPTs teaching. Does it comes under passive learning, ma'am?
No, it depends. For example, even a teacher, all of us have been through the formal education system, and you cannot say every teacher made it a passive, made us passive learner. No, the teacher, I said while I spoke about the lecture method, that a teacher who is using a lecture method which is two-way. Two-way means where the lecture is interspersed with questions, it is interspersed with tasks, activities, discussions. There you are able to actively involve your learner in the process of lecture also. If the teacher, say for example, you are teaching mathematics, right? I am reminded of a class in statistics that my teacher used to come to the class and he used to demonstrate one numerical on the board. But while he was demonstrating, he used to involve the learners at each step. Maybe all the next step, he would pose a question, what could be the next step? He would say, what would be the calculation of this? What will be the product of this multiplication, and so on. So he was not demonstrating one way. but he was involving the learners even in the demonstration, raising question and asking the logic behind those. So this depends. Even I would say that teachers, one comment I would like to share with all of you, that my observation has been that PPTs have ruined the system. Why? I compare myself when I go and teach in the class on the blackboard without the use of PPT. I'm free to move in any direction, but I can explain at length. But when I'm bound by the PPT, maybe I'm restricted to some extent. And I have found that many of my colleagues, they just read what is written on the PPT. There is hardly any explanation built on that. Agar wohi karna hai, so one of the incidents which took place in Delhi long way back in late 80s or beginning of 90, that a student got up and said, I want to leave the class. And the teacher said, why? He said, I've got this book at home. I can lie in the bed and read it. So what is the purpose of me as a teacher? So what is needed is even the lecture, if it is adequately with the examples, with the questions, with the involvement of learners, and you are trying to relate to the real life, things are different. You can develop higher level abilities. It is dependent upon you, how you utilize it, how you utilize it.
Yeah, madam. I completely agree with you because maybe PPT should be reduced, madam. That I also
Even the Harvard has taken up a study, and they said reduce and minimize the use of the PPTs, because now what has happened, even many of the students, they ask for PPTs, the teachers, and they study only PPTs and appear in the exam. They don't go to the book and read it.
Yeah, madam. That's completely.
What we are promoting. My role as a teacher is not to mug up the things and reproduce those things in the class. And my students' job is not to memorize it and repeat it, reproduce it in the examination. So things need to improve at both ends, And I would say teacher plays a very prominent role in that.
Yeah, madam. Yeah, and one more thing, madam, that in active learning, one phrase is there, madam, reversal questionnaire or reversal questioning. Yeah. What does it mean, madam? Can you say once again, please?
You pair the students, and students pose question to each other on the topic which they have learned. This is one student pose a question to another pose a question, another pose a question, and this is how it is reversal questioning.
Oh, okay.
This is
okay,
what
madam.
my understanding is.
Yeah, madam. Yeah.
Somebody said, ma'am, can you repeat the jigsaw method? Jigsaw is when you divide the topic into 4 parts. Say, for example, I'm dealing with this, say, Bloom's taxonomy. So, say we are dealing with the concept, we are dealing with the cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain. Now, there are 4 students in a group. One student will clarify the concept of learning on outcome. Another would learn the concept of cognitive domain. Another would learn about the psychomotor domain. Another would learn about the affective domain. When they come to the class, that student who has learned concept will explain the concept to all the other 3 members. Then another would explain the cognitive, another would. So, by the way, all the 4 will learn the complete topic. This is jigsaw. Then somebody said, what is meant by the muddiest point? Muddiest means a point in the lecture which is not understood by the students, where there is confusion, chaos among the students. That is the muddiest, or maybe the difficult point which the student could not understand. Reena ji ne pucha. Then how Bloom level are related with domains? Sir, domains, because we have been talking about the knowledge, we have been talking about the skill, and we have been talking about the behavior, attitudes and behavior. So any learning outcome that is concerned with acquisition of information falls in the cognitive. Cognitive means how do we process and acquire the information. Anything which has to do with ability to do the task, perform a task, that comes under psychomotor skill, because it includes cognition as well as muscular coordination. So all those tasks which are part of your lab work, field work, project work, they will come under the psychomotor domain. And then comes your affective domain, attitudes, behavior, and soft skills. All those become a part of that. Then some of the verbs, wo answer ho gaya already, Mr. Manoj, that one verb can be used at 2 different levels. ठीक है जी. Then tell basic difference between POs and POs. देखिए, program education objectives are the broad statements related to the career and professional goals of an individual. For example, a person who is doing undergraduate program, there are 3 options, primarily 3 options available. Person can pursue higher level study, the person can start his own venture, the person can go for the wage employment. So first thing, if the person is going for the wage employment, that means he has the ability to apply the learned knowledge and skill at the job level and perform efficiently. This is, I think this is more simple program education objective. Second is, if he is going to pursue higher level studies, he demonstrates the prerequisite knowledge to learn the courses at the higher education level is another program education objective. If the person is going to start his own venture, then I would say manage the venture. Manage the venture is one which will include many things. So this is what the program education objective is. And what is program outcomes? Program outcomes is on completion of a program. This is program education objectives are after 4 to 5 years of graduation from the system where the student is placed is program education objectives. But program outcomes is what a student is able to do on completion of a program. Now, say for example, a person has undergone a program on computer science and engineering. Now, one of the program objectives, as you can see there, आपने 12 देखे थे ना, तो मैं कहती हूँ जब आपने कहा कि he can select, so he has learned different languages, he has to write a software, design or develop a software which is customized, and he has to select number of, he has to select कौन सी language या कौन सा algorithm, etc. He is using that knowledge and then he is developing. So one of this is covered under जो आपने अभी देखा था, select technique or create a technique or create a tool or create an IT software, वो उसका part बन जाता. So program outcomes have already been taken from the graduate attribute, so you can relate to this. So it is more specific to the courses which have been taught, and the overall objective of that course is reflected in the program outcome. हाँ जी, किसी ने कहा प्लीज एक्सप्लेन डोमेन्स. डोमेन्स को एक्सप्लेन करना तो मुश्किल है दोबारा से, but to just to differentiate, cognitive deals with all learning outcomes that have to do with acquisition and processing of information. Psychomotor domain includes all those learning outcomes where you are concerned with ability to do something with rapidity, speed, and accuracy. And then affective domain deals with attitudes, behaviors, soft skills, which are required by the student to be an effective member of the society or a professional. Then we have there is, please, domains ka ho gaya, POs ka ho gaya. POs are expected to be achieving 4 to POs after the completion. Fine, ठीक है. Any other question? I think the questions have been answered. Ji.
Yes, ma'am. You have already covered all the
From
questions.
my side, I think I've answered. But the time which has, I think we have already exceeded the time. Over to the organizer. Thank you so much for being interactive. I hurriedly completed the 2 things. You can go to details, but I made it a point that I'll keep 20 to 25 minutes for discussion, which will clarify the doubt. So thank you for being interactive. Thank you so much. Over to Dr. Balwinder.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much
My
for
pleasure.
so informative and so effective session, I would say. So you have
So much.
in detail you have covered about Bloom's taxonomy, various verbs and words at different levels, how to use those verbs, and you have also explained different domains of learning. And you have also rightly outlined that we need paradigm shift in learning techniques. You have talked about the constructive approach, and you have laid emphasis on learning-centric strategies. So we should adopt these learner-centric strategies, having active learning methods of teaching. And you have also then covered about the choice-based credit system and use of MOOCs in achieving this choice-based credit system. And in the later part, you have discussed about techniques which we can use for development of practical skills like project-based learning, problem-based learning, and other such jigsaw techniques. So overall, ma'am, I feel from the core of my heart that this was a session which is very much required to be followed in later period, and it has covered almost all the basically points related to our teaching and dealing with the students. So thank you very much, ma'am, for giving
My
this.
pleasure. Thanks for providing this opportunity. So all the best to everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.